episode of Facing Forward, today with Alicia Waller. My friendly friend said to me, take my hand, you can see I don't want to go, I don't want to go, I don't want to follow that lead. Still give me a hand, I will be free. But I wonder if I believe you want to go, I don't want to go, if you want to turn around and leave. Okay, so let's get to know you a little bit. So let's start with why and when did you decide to become a singer? What inspired you to become a singer?
This is a question I've heard a few times recently. The honest truth is that I always wanted to be a singer. I'm one of those people that never really wanted to do anything else. My earliest memory, I always say this, my earliest memory is singing to my parents. My father makes a joke because I always say that I was standing in between my parents in the back seat. And my father's always like, Alicia, you're making it sound like you weren't wearing a seatbelt. And so I must say that the car was parked.
Okay.
But that's my earliest memory, singing to them and singing my heart out. My favorite song was Luther Vandross. Sorry if you're hearing the grandfather clock.
Not a
Luther Vandross. I always call it Don't Want to Be a Fool, but I don't think that's actually the title. I think that's like the chorus hook.
line, yeah.
Yeah, but I never wanted to do anything else.
So my father is actually a classically trained singer. He's a singing teacher. So I kind of started to sing just like, I don't know. I don't think I ever made that decision, but it just happened because, he lives in my house. And I love that, I think it's in your bio that it says singing across genre. And I really like that because for me, I love opera, I love classical music, and I love singing it, but I also love jazz, pop, R&B, hip hop, like everything, and I love singing everything, and it is kind of different. I don't know if you agree. So why is that important to you, and what would you like people to take away maybe from your music and from how you approach it?
I think as a musician, for me, like there's a curiosity about music, and it's also the lens through which I often see the world. Obviously I use my eyes sometimes too. But like whenever I'm naturally curious about culture, I've always kind of had that hunger. I've always been like looking around, like fascinated by people from other places, stories from other places, foods, all that, like music from other places. And so then when I got older, I started to try to like put those two things together. And it developed into this kind of like it developed into me taking my practice as a classical singer and trying to apply that to different musics from around the world. Right. So like when I look, it like felt super novel then, but when I look back, I was basically just doing mini recitals. I was just doing them in a jazz format, and then instead of like European composers from European countries, it was just composers or songwriters from different parts of the world. And so then that starts to develop, right? But over time, I start to realize that I was not paying as much attention to my culture, like my people's story. So when I refer to singing across genres, it's kind of like one points to my fascination and my just general interest, and then two, my desire to convey to people, to listeners, whoever wants to listen, the kind of like repetition of stories around the world, that like corny saying that we really are all the same. But like, you break things down, in your translations, your texts, like over and over again, we're telling the same stories. And I personally became fascinated with the ways that we tell the same stories in our own way, The third thing is probably me kind of wanting to reclaim my culture and my story. And so like there's the fascination, the culture sharing, and then also like a reclaiming, a personal search as well.
Wow. And let's talk about your EP, Some Hidden Treasures. What inspired that first EP, and how did you approach creating it?
So there's the artistic answer to that, and then there's the practical answer to that. So I'll start with the artistic because it's like, it's nicer. So artistically, I'm coming from a world of like classical music, and I'm coming from a world of constantly working with people with instruments in hand. That's what I'm accustomed to. But then I grew up listening to like R&B, soul, but I really, when I was young, I was like obsessed with the sounds of the 70s and like all different forms, like funk, rock, like all of it. Soul, obviously from the 70s. If it came from that period, there's just such a diversity of instrumentation, songwriting, like texturally, it's just a thrilling time. So I wanted to I guess, recreate that in my own way, but not do, like people talk about throwbacks. I didn't want to do a throwback in the sense of it sounding like that, but I wanted it to like belong to that lineage. I wanted to make something that like was like, it had a band feel, like musicians in the room, things that like maybe weren't always perfect. So that's what I was chasing. And then I also, again, like I spoke earlier about like reconnecting to my own culture. I was also chasing kind of like that pursuit of soul music, that pursuit of my people's story and how can I contribute to this lineage of like Black American music. So that's what I was kind of aiming for with Some Hidden Treasure. I also wanted to tell kind of an honest, I think I'm a little like, I like uncovering things. And that's obvious with the title, Some Hidden Treasure. Musically, I love, like, I can't tell you how much I love and have always loved listening to things and like hearing what I never heard before. And it just constantly, like that constant discovery. And so I kind of like, this is the like music dork in me, but I kind of wanted to make like a little, like a little treasure map.
Or maybe the third time you listen to it, you discover another part or something.
It could be discovered as time went along, something that could have layered meanings. And so like, in addition to, right, the personal, the cultural pursuit on my end, the musical pursuit of kind of like this like a live band feel, I also wanted to tell my personal relationship with my womanhood, And so there is for me, like, I like to hide things, but I wanted to talk in my own way, very assertively about what it feels like for me in my womanhood, like what womanhood looks like to me, and to be strong in that and express it. The practical answer was also
part of it.
Also, so I had just gotten back from Europe. I had a gig over in Portugal. And I came back, and this was in the time that I was like doing a lot of covers, essentially, right? Because I was singing all these songs from different parts of the world. And I got back, and I was like, man, you can't make any money this way. It's terrible, right? Because like,
hey, this is the reality, though.
It's
like,
true. And so, like, I had always played around with the idea of songwriting, but I never took myself that seriously because I was always such a singer. And so, so I came back and I was like, well, one, you for yourself, you kind of need to assert who you are as an artist and what you're trying to say for it to make sense for consumers. And then two, why not like give it a shot? You've been playing with this for a long time. You think it sounds pretty cool. Why not try to put it out?
So you're talking about shows and like all that stuff. I wonder what the transition was like for you being an artist and also being around people most of the time, even if maybe you're not playing yourself, but you're going out, you're listening maybe to your friends' shows or whatever. So what was that transition like having to stay at home?
So I'm going to answer this question in terms of inspiration. It has been, there's like, especially in a place like New York, and that exchange is so much a part of it, and it's so inspiring. Like hearing people, being around people, and then also like the like frenetic energy of like, are you doing something? Like, let's do something. You're doing something,
always like ready to.
So that has kind of been hard to replace, that kind of like the inspiration that you get by being in communion with other people. But one of the things that has been super beautiful about this time is that I don't think I've had this much time to just slow down and listen to music. Just like really like, and not that I'm creating, you know, just like remember how much I love it, and all of these musicians that have inspired me over the years, and like discovering new things too. That has been kind of cool about this time. But you know, it doesn't replace like, right, like being in the act yourself and being in the room yourself, which I do hope to get back to soon.
Very nice. Okay, last question would be, what is the most important advice in your opinion for someone who wants to pursue a singing career?
You know,
Oh, well, I mean,
yeah. So, okay. So, I always think like three things at once. So I'm actually going to point to something that a friend of mine said to me fairly recently. So I come from pure classical background. Like I was expecting to be soprano. Like I wanted to do Verdi, and that's like what I was aiming for. And then there was this hunger for other things, and it shifted for me. But I think the way that I think about voice and the way that I have pursued music it's still very much nurtured from that background. And so I was talking to a friend of mine who's in music publishing. So she's an arts admin. And I was talking about like, it's been a challenge for me kind of understanding the business aspect, or I don't want to say a challenge, but it's been a challenge to learn. It wasn't something that came as naturally to me. And it's something that I'm still learning. And one of the things she said is the curse of conservatory. You have all these young kids coming in, and you stress the art, like that's the only thing. And it is, but they go out into the world, or that is the first thing, but then they go out into the world and they're like sheep amongst wolves because they haven't given a thought to business, haven't given a thought to marketing. And so I wish I could sit here. Okay, that's the one thing. So I say that, pay attention to your business, right? And then on the other hand, I also point to one of my favorite singers in the world, Leontine Price, when she says, at the end of the day, though, it is all about this. So,
it is,
right? It's like 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. Yes, like there's the business, but at the end of the day, like even as I take my time to figure things out, I know what I'm doing with my voice, right? So it's taken me some time to learn the business aspect of this, and to learn like the practical switching over to recorded music is a shift, it's been a shift that I've had to learn. But at the end of the day, I do know how to sing. And as long as you cultivate that and take care of that, protect it, that's like number one. But don't forget about the business too. Yeah, that's my advice.
Thank you so much for watching again, and I'll see you in the next episode.
And making room, so I open the window.